Tiddalick, the greedy frog. A long, long time ago, when the world was new, it was black, empty, cold. There was nothing, no earth, no sky, no light, no moon, no stars, nothing growing, no animals. And then the dream time began. And the rainbow serpent slithered through the world and brought moon and the sun and the stars and light, and grass began to grow, and trees and flowers and plants. And then the wind blew, and all the animals blew across the land, and each found the place they felt most comfortable. And the world began to settle down, and it was a good place. But in those days there was an enormous frog. Now this frog was as big as a mountain. I know you won't believe me, but it is absolutely true. He was a huge frog, and his name was Tiddalick, and he was called Tiddalick because of the sound he made when he spoke. He'd go, Tiddalick, 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 and that's what people called him. And when he was in a good mood, the world was a good place. The sun shone, everything was warm, plants grew, everybody was happy. But when he was grumpy, oh, watch out. A grumpy Tiddalick was to be avoided at all costs. And one particular morning he got up and he was so very, very grumpy. He decided he was going to play a trick on all the other animals. And he went down to the lake, and he drank, and he drank, and he drank, until it was completely dry. There was nothing but cracked mud at the bottom. I said he was big, but it gets worse. Because when all the animals came down to have their drink, they said, Tiddalick, what have you done? How are we going to have our drink now? And Tiddalick went, Tiddalick, Tiddalick. And he heaved himself off, and he was wobbling horribly because he was so full of water. And he went to the nearby stream, and with one lick, that was dried up. And then he went further up the valley until he came to a river, and he went glug, 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 until that was dried up. And everybody said, don't do this, Tiddalick. But Tiddalick liked being horrible. And this particular day he felt extremely horrible. And so he went all the way across the land, drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking, and getting bigger and bigger, until at last he came to the very last stream, and he slurped it up, and he was so full he could not move. But if you'd poked him, he'd have gone wobble, 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 because he was so full of water. His eyes bulged and his mouth curled up, and he sat in the sun going, yes, all the animals are going to be miserable now, and I'm Tiddalick, and I don't care. Well, the days went by, 1, 2, 3 days, and of course all the animals were thirsty, and they were going to die if they didn't get something soon. Nobody knew what to do. All the animals were beside themselves with worry. And then the wombat called all the animals to a meeting and said, I think we need to plead with Tiddalick, and we need to beg him to give us our water back. And so the kangaroo went very carefully up to Tiddalick and said, Sir Tiddalick, I like to jump around. I like to spring around and sort of dance, but I haven't got any strength to move. And Tiddalick didn't even look at the kangaroo. And then next the dingo came, and the dingo said, Tiddalick, I'm really, really thirsty. You know me, I like to howl and bark at the moon all night, and I haven't got the strength to even whimper. Tiddalick ignored him. Then the kookaburra came up and said, Tiddalick, you like my jokes. You like the tricks I play. I've got no strength to be funny. But Tiddalick didn't even open one eye. Oh, the animals didn't know what to do. And then a little bandicoot came along and flapped his ears and said, I've got an idea. If we make him laugh, then we can make him laugh so much he'll sick up all the water. First everybody went, ugh. And then they thought, well, maybe even sicked up water was better than no water. And so the kangaroo and the emu, with their last bit of strength, did a silly jumping dance all around Tiddalick. He didn't even watch. And then the dingo came out and he sang silly barking songs. Bow, bow, bow. Tiddalick wasn't even listening. And the kookaburra came out and he began to tell some funny stories. Normally Tiddalick loved kookaburra stories, but didn't even open an eye or twitch a muscle. And then the lizard came out and the lizard went wriggling along with his funny walk, and he opened one eye and looked one way, and he opened another eye and looked another way, and he rolled his eyes around. Normally that made Tiddalick burst out with laughing, but Tiddalick just peered under a crack from his eye and closed it again. He didn't care. So the animals were desperate. One more night and they'd all be dead. And then a little eel wriggled along, and he said, I've got an idea. If you can help me up onto Tiddalick's tummy, I think I can make him laugh. Well, the animals couldn't think of anything better to do. And so between them they heaved and pushed, and the little slippery eel wriggled all the way up onto Tiddalick's tummy. This Tiddalick opened one eye and said, Tiddalick? And the eel said, eel, and began to wriggle. And he began to wriggle and began to dance and began to twiddle, and he went round and round and round and round and round like a whirlwind, and he wriggled all the way up Tiddalick's tummy and all the way down, and then under Tiddalick's arm. Tiddalick went, Tiddalick, 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 oh, stop, Tiddalick. And he started to squirt water. And as the eel became a little bit damper, he could wriggle even better, and he went tickle, 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 tickle. Tiddalick went tiddlet, 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 tiddlet. Don't, no, stop. And he threw back his great big mouth, and he squirted water. Not just there, but it squirted all over Australia, and it rained, 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 and it rained. And he drank so much water, it took 3 days and 3 nights before he'd squirted out all the water in his tummy. And when that was gone, the eel was still dancing and Tiddalick was still giggling and laughing and rolling around. Well, the land soon came back to life. The grass grew and the trees grew, and fruits and flowers came back, and the drought was over. But ever since that day, nobody's forgotten the drought that Tiddalick caused. And Tiddalick had many, many children. Now they're just little frogs instead of huge great ones. They still say, Tiddalick, if you tickle them. If there's going to be a drought, they still swallow a lot of water and then bury themselves underground. And that is how the other animals know that a drought is coming. So if you want to know what the weather's going to be like, make sure you look for a Tiddalick and watch her carefully. Tiddalick.